Dear students, in this video we shall be talking about the Unit 3 of Human Resource Management course, and in this unit we will be talking about recruitment, selection, placement, induction and employee changes. So let us move on to the topics further. So this unit talks about recruitment, selection, placement and induction. So coming over to the first question, what is recruitment? So recruitment is motivating people to apply for jobs in an organization. It is basically gathering a pool of applicants so that the best possible candidate can be selected. So as a recruiter or as a company, if we are looking out for employees, of course, we will not be hiring the very first person who will come across. As an organization, we want the best people to be working for us. And how do we find these best people to be working for us? How do we attract talent? That is basically through recruitment. So by means of recruitment, companies promote employees, they motivate employees, they invite employees to invite for or to apply for job applications in the organization. So recruitment is basically creating an attraction. It is an attraction towards an organization. It is attracting a pool of talented employees, whether they are fresh graduates or postgraduates, or whether they are trained and experienced people working somewhere else. So and attracting a talented pool of candidates in the organization is basically recruitment. So the process of recruitment basically involves seeking and attracting a pool of people from which qualified candidates for job vacancies can be chosen. This definition is given by Byers and Drew. So this definition again focuses on that recruitment is what? Recruitment is a process which aims at attracting people who are qualified enough so that they can apply for vacant job positions in the organization, and the organization has a sufficient pool of candidates so that they pick the best out of those. So recruitment is the process of searching for prospective candidates and entice them to apply for the jobs in an organization. So recruitment is a process by means of which organizations, they look out for prospective candidates and motivate them to apply for jobs in the organization. So few things that we need to know about recruitment are, first thing, recruitment is one of the key result area of human resource management function. The efficiency and effectiveness with which the human resource management functions, or with which the human resource management team works, one of their key result areas is the recruitment. How effective they have been in inviting these applications, what kind of people have applied, what number of people have applied. So all these things can be used to measure the productivity of HR team. Then the next thing it talks about is recruitment tries to match human resources to the strategic and operational needs of the organization. So the basic purpose of recruitment is not just to attract any type of employees, but to attract those employees, those human resources, that kind of manpower which is good enough to meet the organization's requirements with respect to attaining strategic and operational roles. Another aspect with respect to recruitment is it ensures that there is optimum utilization of human resources, the existing human resources as well as the potential human resources. So recruitment is a two-way process. So recruitment, we say it is a two-way process because it is a two-way relationship between the prospective candidate and the employer. The employer, or we can say the organization is looking out for qualified and suitable candidates, and on the other hand the applicants are looking out for potential employment opportunities. They are also looking out for job vacancies. Only when these two when the needs of these two will match, then a perfect match of an organization need and an employee is going to match. So in both the cases, the organization has a choice whether to choose that candidate or not, and similarly the applicants also have a choice whether to apply for that organization or not. So that is why recruitment is a two-way street. So there are certain strategic decisions associated with recruitment, and these decisions are human resource planning decisions, strategic recruiting decisions, and then decisions on recruiting sources and methods. Now these are some of the important decisions which are to be taken with respect to the recruitment. Now very first thing is human resource planning decision. Now when we talk about human resource planning is basically deciding in advance how many number of people and what kind of people are required in the organization in order to meet organizational goals and objectives. So when we talk about this category of decision, the questions that are there in front of HR managers is how many employees are needed. This will of course depend on the organizational goals, objectives, the targets to be attained, and the number of vacancies that are there in the organization. When are these employees needed? What are the KSAs? K is the knowledge. What kind of knowledge should these candidates be possessing? What kind of skill requirements do organizations have? And what kind of attitudes these people need to possess in order to match the organizational requirements? And are there any special qualifications, any special trainings, or any special requirements that an employee needs to meet in order to occupy that job role? So these are few of the human resource planning decisions. Then coming over to next category of decisions is strategic recruitment decisions. Now these basically talk about first where to recruit. Now, recruitment can be done through internal sources as well as through external sources. Now, over here, the organization, the HR department, they need to identify, they need to realize whether to rely for internal sources or to go for external sources of recruitment. Now, this will again depend on the nature of the job, the type of people needed, and so on. Then second question that arises is who to recruit. What are the flexible working options otherwise? So whether we need to hire full-time employees or whether flexible work staffing options, they will suffice the need of the organization. And third category is what kind of job requirements are there. Then the third category of decisions to be met is decisions on recruiting sources or methods. Now it talks about advertising choices, recruiting activities, and so on. Now when we talk about recruitment, every organization has a recruitment policy. Now this recruitment policy are the basic guidelines which will help any HR manager to take recruitment related decisions in the organization. Now this policy will help an HR manager to answer few questions like how to recruit, on what basis to select the employee, and what kind of methods are used for recruitment. These answers can be given by the means of a recruitment policy which is formulated to make sure that there are certain guidelines which an organization follows every year or every time recruitment has to take place so that consistency can be maintained. Then coming over to the process of recruitment. Now recruitment, the process first involves identifying the job requirements or the vacancies. First of all, the HR department will identify what are the various job requirements, what are the various areas or functional departments where vacancies are there, so that appropriate job postings can be made. Then the second thing that is to be done is conducting a job analysis. Now job analysis is done so that a detailed study of the job can be taken up so that eventually the organization has a job description and a job specification. Job description is required so that the recruiters or the people who are involved in the job, in the recruitment and selection process, they get to know, and even the prospective candidates, they get to know what are the demands with respect to the job, what kind of roles, duties and responsibilities the candidate is supposed to perform for that particular job. And when we talk about job specification clearly mentions what kind of requirements we have or what kind of education, experience, qualification, educational background or any physical strength is needed out of an employee in order to perform that job effectively. So job analysis basically helps in providing us job description as well as job specification. Then the decision to recruit is taken. In this decision, what is to be done is the recruitment methods and recruitment sources are to be identified. Whether to go in for internal source or to go in for external source, conducting a cost benefit analysis, choosing the best possible method of recruitment. So that comes under this. Then the recruitment program is implemented, the job vacancies are posted, the people are invited to apply for jobs, their performers and applications are screened, and the process further goes on. Then at the end, evaluation of recruitment program is conducted. Now evaluation is conducted in terms of the key result areas to see whether the recruitment program was successful or not. Now the success of a recruitment program will depend on many factors. Now there are many factors such as how many number of people applied for the job, what kind of qualifications did people possess who applied for the job in the organization. If an organization receives good number of applications from good quality applicants, that shows that the recruitment process was effective enough. Now coming over to this further, the process of recruitment, the very first thing that is to be done is human resource planning. That is identifying the number of people and the type of people needed in the organization. Now so human resource planning basically ensures that there are right number of people at the right time, at the right place, and they are utilized in the most efficient manner in the organization. Then the job vacancies are identified within the organization, the various departments that is identified. Then job descriptions and job specifications, they are prepared so that the interviewers, they are also well versed with the kind of duties and responsibilities the candidate is supposed to perform. The candidate also gets to know what kind of expectations the organization will have from that employee. Then what type of person characteristics are we looking in for, whether with respect to physical stamina, with respect to physical appearance, with respect to mental aptitude, with respect to education, experience, qualifications, and so on. So that is why job description and job specification is prepared. Then the decision to recruit is taken. Choice of recruitment process or choice of recruitment methods or sources is done. We need to choose between whether to go in for internal sources of recruitment or to go in for external sources of recruitment. Then implementing the recruitment program, inviting applications from the selected candidate, from the prospective candidates, attracting candidates, motivating people to apply for jobs in the organization. So we have a huge pool of applicants out of which the best applicant can be chosen. Then finally, the recruitment program has to be evaluated whether the recruitment program was successful enough or not. So on what rating can be given to the recruitment program, that is finally decided to see the cost benefit analysis and to evaluate whether the recruitment program was successful for the organization. Now when we talk about evaluation of recruitment depends on all these factors which are there in front of the screen. First, quantity of applicants. If the organization receives a good number of people who have applied for the jobs, there is a huge pool of applicants from which the best possible applicants can be chosen. That is one factor on basis of which recruitment can be evaluated. Another factor is quality of applicants. If apart from quantity, if the organization has received a good quality application in terms of the more the number of applicants, they suit or they match the job specification requirements, that means the HR department has done their job well. good candidates have applied for the job, so that they can be potentially hired in the organization. Then the next thing is yield ratio. Yield ratio is the comparison of the number of applicants at one stage of the recruitment process to the number at the next stage. So if from the previous stage a large number of people can be moved on to the next stage, this means really good quality of applicants have applied. And last is evaluating the recruiting cost and benefits. So recruitment costs and benefits, it involves direct costs as well as indirect costs, costs with respect to travel, agents, salaries, operating costs, and so on. So a cost benefit analysis needs to be done to see whether the recruitment efforts were worthwhile or not. Now, this is one example of yield ratio to determine the needed applicants. Now, this is how it is done. Say suppose an organization receives 300 applicants. So, and out of these 300 applicants, 100 people have been shortlisted for final interviews. So, at this stage, yield ratio will be calculated as initial number of applicants divided by the final interviewees. So this is 3:1. Similarly, out of these 100 people who were shortlisted for interviews, 50 candidates were offered the job. 50 candidates were those who were good enough and job offer was made to them. So the yield ratio will be calculated as 100 divided by 50, which is 2:1. Then out of these 50 job offers, 25 people actually joined or they were hired in the organization. So at this stage, the yield ratio is going to be 2:1. So better the yield ratio, this shows that the organization is good enough and successful enough in carrying out its recruitment process. Now, how many number of people and what kind of people are applying for the job, it depends on many factors. One of the first factor is image of the organization. Now, company's goodwill plays a very important role. We all know that every employee will be interested in applying for a job or in applying for a company which holds a good market reputation. So if a company has good image, good reputation, goodwill in the organization, more chances that more number of people and good quality candidates will apply for jobs. Then the second factor that determines the evaluation or that determines the quality and quantity of candidates who apply for job is the attractiveness of job itself. What kind of job role is being offered? What kind of duties and responsibilities are associated with the job? The kind of job itself, that also plays a very important role. The more attractive is the job, better the recruitment process will be there. Then internal organizational policy. Now the policy of the organization also influences recruitment process. Whether the organization goes in for external recruitment, internal recruitment, then even if the organization is going in for external recruitment, what kind of particular sources is it going to target? If these things are not flexible, then the organization will definitely have limited choices. So as a result, the number of applicants to be received will eventually reduce. And finally, recruitment cost. Maximum efforts should be made so as to keep these costs at the minimum possible level. If these costs can be maintained at a minimum level, the more will be the effectiveness of the recruitment process. Now coming over to the next important part of this recruitment, that is internal and external recruitment. Let us talk about internal recruitment methods. Now when we talk about internal recruitment methods, it basically comprises of recruiting the candidates from within the organization. That is what we are giving the chance to the existing employees to apply for any vacant position in the organization. Now how it can be done, these are few of the methods. The job vacancies can be posted on notice boards, it can be circulated by means of newsletters, circulars, by means of intranet within the organization. Job postings can be done within the organization. Human resource information systems can be used for giving information to the existing employees so that they can apply for any job within the organization in some other department or at a level which is higher at which they are already working, so on. Then another way is transfers, promotions, and referrals of employees. So these are the various sources of internal recruitment. Now, why is internal recruitment useful or beneficial? First thing, it is cost effective. We need not spend any money on expensive advertisements, on conducting expensive interview programs. So that is not needed. Then, since the employee competencies and performances are already well known, the employee is already well versed with the organization. So any kind of special place induction training may not be provided to employees. It helps in boosting the morale of the workforce because people also get this sense that they are getting better work opportunities within their organization itself. People tend to develop good relationship with their management because they develop a positive attitude, kind of a training and development for the employee, because the employee will prepare for the next higher level, and of course better utilization of the existing manpower. Since every coin has two sides, so when we talk about advantages, there are certain disadvantages also which are associated with recruitment. First thing, we tend to miss out on the talent available externally. We are not inviting any fresh blood in the organization, which ultimately leads to inbreeding. So we have limited number of choice and it reduces the competition. When external people are invited to apply, a lot of competition is going to be there, right? But these things are going to be missed out in case of internal recruitments. Coming over to external recruitment methods, one of the very first and the most popular method is newspaper advertisements. The newspaper advertisements are basically based on the theory of IDA: attention, interest, desire, and action. So newspaper, we can publish our job postings, job vacancies in the newspapers. People do read newspapers when they are looking out for jobs. Then we can post job vacancies in professional magazines of certain associations and bodies. Then it can be also done by means of radio and by means of TV, which is called as telecasting. Then external recruitment methods can also involve education institutions. uh, Companies going to go for their placement drives in various colleges at UG level as well as at PG level to choose the best possible candidates who have just graduated freshly from these institutions. Then recruitment agencies or third party sources can be another important way. They act as mediators, they help in saving time and effort of the organization, and they try to make a match and a balance between what an organization needs and what a prospective candidate is looking forward to. Then another method is headhunting, that is attracting people at higher posts in the other organizations to apply for jobs in the competitors' organization. So that is basically headhunting, basically looking out for top level, corporate level employees for the organization. Then walk-in interviews, again, which is very popular in certain kinds of job roles, is very can be used as an external recruitment method. Job fairs are also good source of for many people who are looking out for different kinds of jobs in within the country and abroad. So job fairs is also an external recruitment method. So all these different methods of recruitment can be utilized by organizations. Then apart from this, nowadays technology plays a very important role. So recruitment through internet, making use of certain websites, making use of LinkedIn, making use of internet sources, making use of things like Naukri.com, timesjobs.com. So all these things have also become very popular tools for the fresh blood. So coming over to the advantages of recruitment methods, the very first advantage is that it helps in bringing in fresh blood into the organization. So which brings lot of innovation, lot of creativity, lot of newness. So company has lot of options to look in for, so that so they can choose the best possible candidate. We can find more innovative, more incorporate employees to be incorporated in the new organization. It creates a better public image of the organization when these corporates, they go to the job fairs, or they go to the colleges or campus drives. So it creates a good image that these people are giving opportunities to people outside. Then coming over to disadvantages of external sources, the first and the foremost is, of course, it is an expensive process, it is time consuming. Then the candidates that we are hiring, we are not sure about their performance in the organization when they will be actually doing the task, because during the interviews, during the entire recruitment process, people will definitely try to put their best foot forward. But actually in within the organization, whether they will be able to adjust or not, that is again a question. So we may not know whether the employee will be retained in the organization, whether the employee will be able to fit into the culture of the organization, and so on. So, and last but not the least, the existing employees, they may feel a little frustrated or little demotivated, because they may be looking out for better job opportunities which are actually given to some external people. That is why they may feel a little demotivated for the in the organization. Then, apart from hiring regular full-time employees, there are certain flexible job options that organizations may have. These are some of them. First is regular employment. Regular employment basically means it may be full-time employment or part-time employment, wherein people are employed on for more than 6 months or even for a longer duration. Then there can be part-time or full-time employees depending on how much hours per day they are devoting to the organization. Then contractual employees could be there. Then employee leasing is also possible. Then temporary employees can be there, seasonal employees can be there. So these are the various flexible job options, flexible staffing options that the companies have if they do not want to hire full-time people. And at times it is quite possible that the whatever vacancies that the organization has, they are temporary in nature, because the organization might have some new project in their hand, which is for a limited period of time, short period of time, and after that time period the project is going to wind up, so they may not be needing those employees. So these are some of the options that the companies can try rather than recruiting full-time employees. Now, the next obvious thing that follows recruitment is selection. As the slide also shows, it is basically choosing or picking the best possible candidate out of the pool of candidates. So, as defined, selection is the process of choosing the most suitable applicant for a job from among the available applicants. So, by means of recruitment, we gathered a pool of applicants. And when we choose the best applicant out of this pool of applicants, that is basically selection. So, why is selection important? Basically, because so that eventually the company has the right person at the right job, so that organization's goals can be achieved. So rejecting the right person or placement of the wrong person will have a severe impact on the organization. The entire effort, the entire money, the entire time that was spent on recruitment and selection will go wasted if a wrong person is selected and placed on the job. So that is why choosing the right person and placing him on the right job is very, very important. Now, we generally say that recruitment is a positive process and selection is a negative process. Now, why it is being said is because selection basically involves rejecting the maximum number of candidates. We choose very few candidates in selection, whereas recruitment requires attraction of candidates. That is why recruitment is positive. We are not rejecting anyone in recruitment. But in selection, most of the candidates are going to be rejected and very few are going to be selected. That is why selection is negative in nature and recruitment is positive in nature. Coming over to the process of selection, the very first thing that goes is application, screening and shortlisting. First of all, there are so many applicants who have applied, then the role or the task of HR team is to choose or to shortlist the best applicants out of these. So these applicants are presented in the tabulated form. A preliminary short interview is conducted so as to see that whatever candidates are being chosen, they basically meet the minimum possible requirements that are actually needed from the employees. Then lot of employment tests are there which are conducted. Then interviews are conducted, reference checking is done, medical examination, then final selection of candidates is done. Then after that, various documents related to experience, related to qualifications, they are collected, they are verified, and finally job offer is made to the candidate. So this is how selection goes on. Now, when the selection process is being carried out, there are certain selection process involves one very important stage, that is interviews. Now, what is an interview? Interview is basically face-to-face interaction between the employee and the prospective candidate, so that the employer, they gets to know about the candidate and they can take decision whether the candidate is suitable for the job or not. In interviews, the candidate also has an option or opportunity of asking certain questions from the prospective employer with respect to the expectations that the employer has, with respect to the roles, duties and responsibilities to be performed in the job, with respect to the overall work environment that will be provided to the employee, and so on. Now, when we are talking about interviews, interviews can be broadly structured, broadly categorized under few heads. The first one is formal and structured interviews, also called as directive interviews. Now, these kinds of interviews are very, very rigid in their structure, in their nature, with respect to the type of content, with respect to the type of questions that will be asked from the candidate. The interviewer has to select the questions to be asked. There is a set list of questions that will be asked from the candidate, and those questions will be asked in the same identical order from each of the candidates. So the entire interview or the entire sequence of interview is planned well in advance. So there is lack of subjectivity. It is the major advantage of this particular interview, because similar questions will be asked from all the candidates, so biasness in asking questions will not be there. Then the second category of interviews is unstructured interviews, also called as non-directive interviews. In these kinds of interviews, there are no fixed predefined questions. The interview takes its own pace, it takes its own form and shape depending on what was the question asked by the interviewer and what kind of answer was given by the interviewer. Then the third category of interview is stress interview. Now, stress interviews are the ones where the objective or the purpose is to see how a candidate performs under situations or conditions of stress. Because in organizations, stress will definitely be there. There will be stressful situations. There will be definitely testing times. There will be a lot of deadlines that are to be met. So it is very important to see whether the candidate can perform effectively and efficiently under conditions of stress. Then we have this group interview method. In this group interview, a group of candidates are interviewed by an interviewer. Usually they are interviewed at different stages by different interviewers. So it is basically like a group discussion wherein there is a group of candidates and these candidates are repeatedly interviewed by different interviewers stage by stage. We can just have an example in the picture. Then we have a panel interview wherein a panel of experts, 4 to 5 people will with an expertise in different fields or in different domains are forming a panel or a group or a board, and these people together collectively they evaluate the knowledge, skills and attitudes of a candidate. Then we have in-depth interviews. In-depth interviews are the ones which are basically aimed at judging the deeper in-depth knowledge of candidates. These are basically not, of course, the first stage interviews. These are basically the second stage interviews, and such interviews are generally taken by the subject matter experts. Then then the next category is situational type of interviews. Now, situational type of interviews are basically those interviews where candidates are given different situations and their take on those situations is assessed. So, a candidate would be assessed on the basis of the kind of behavior or the kind of decision a candidate would take if that situation is given to them. So these are the different types of interviews. Then once the candidate clears these interviews, then there can be selection tests. In most of the organizations, what happens is basically that these tests, they come before the interviews. Now the reason why tests come before the interviews, the reason is because so many people, so many candidates can appear for these tests, especially pen and paper tests, at one go, and as a result it helps in shortlisting the candidates further. So that, because one-to-one interaction, one-to-one interview takes a lot of effort, time, so it is very expensive. So in order to further eliminate few candidates, selection tests can be performed before interviews in the organizations. Now there are different types of selection tests as well. The first category of selection tests is intelligence tests. Now intelligence tests basically are there to assess the mental ability of the candidates. The purpose is to judge the reasoning ability, power of thoughts, memory, IQ level, quantitative abilities, and reasoning abilities, verbal abilities, numerical abilities of the employees. So that is the purpose of intelligence tests. Then second category is aptitude tests. It basically measures the person's ability to learn a given job. So the basic purpose is to see whether a candidate can learn anything new or not. So that is why aptitude tests are conducted. These days, almost all the companies, the very first stage that comes in their selection process is basically the aptitude test. Only those candidates who qualify or who clear the aptitude test, they move in for the next level of test or the next level of interviews. Then we have this psychomotor tests and physical ability tests. The purpose is basically to see the dexterity, hand-eye movement, hand-eye coordination, reaction time, manual dexterity, speed of the arm movement. Now these kinds of tests are basically used wherein the candidates are working on machines or tools and equipments, wherein lot of coordination, hand-eye movements, they will be required, where the employees are working on assembly line, production line. So psychomotor tests are more applicable over there. Another example, for example, when people are appearing in for driving tests, so that is also an example of this psychomotor ability and physical ability test. So overall we can see that different types of jobs have different kinds of tests associated with them. One kind of test may not be suitable to evaluate the candidate for every type of job. So different types of tests are there because jobs are also different in nature. Then the next category of tests is situational tests, are basically behavioral tests to judge and assess the behavior aspect of the person, how a person feels, uh, and behaves, what kind of body language, gestures, movements the applicant has, whether the applicant has the ability to handle group situations, difficult situations, and what kind of overall behavior the candidate possesses when he is working in the workplace with so many other people. Now then we have the next category of tests called as achievement tests. They are also known as knowledge tests. As the name indicates, they are basically there to check the level of knowledge that an employee possesses with respect to the previous jobs that the employee has done so far. Then the interest test identifies whether the applicant has a genuine interest in the kind of work that the company is offering to the employee. No point of assigning a job to someone who is not interested in this. The reason, because the employee will not sustain that job for a long period of time. The retention question will definitely be there. That is why it is very important to assess whether the candidate is actually interested in the job or not. Then the next category of tests is personality tests. Now personality tests assess a person's value systems and emotions. They help in checking the judgment of employees, decision making abilities of the employees, self confidence of the employees, leadership abilities, communication skills, overall persona of the employee. So whether the employee is introvert, extrovert, submissive, dominant, what kind of behavior does he show when he is there in comfortable situations, when he or she is there in complex or stressful situations. So all these things can be assessed by means of personality tests. Then there is this polygraph test, which is basically the test of truthfulness of applicant interviews, generally not carried out in all kinds of job categories, but in very specific job roles which require utmost amount of integrity on part of the employee. Then graphology, it is basically based on assessing the handwriting of a person, because the way we write the letters and the alphabets, the way we do our signatures, that also reveals a lot about our personality. So these are the different kinds of recruitment selection process, the tests involved, the interview techniques involved, and so